Cities are about people, meeting of people, exchanging ideas, getting people on the streets makes a city. The more density, the more people, the more chances of meeting. And despite technology, people still like to meet.
In a sense, we're working on tabula rasa, it's this container wharf tech, there's really nothing here. And the opportunity to create a new multi-dimensional piece of urban fabric which has real diversity in the sense that a proper city should have.
If you look at the Indigenous history of the site, then into the maritime history, this is the next evolution of that site, and it is a classic urban regeneration.
Barangaroo South is one of the largest developments in Australia, but you have to think of it across this entire peninsula. This is the headland, it's the park, that's complete. Barangaroo Central, yet to come. And over there, the south, it's a new city on the western edge. Like most large developments, Barangaroo South is being tackled in stages. The first, Stage 1A, is almost complete, creating a hub for Sydney's financial services sector and a major new extension of Sydney's CBD. And while it's still under construction, it's already thriving, with apartments, shops, restaurants, cafes and bars all now open for business. And there's more to come. Stage 1B is currently in the planning and design phase and will include a landmark hotel. It's compact, it's dense, it's mixed use and it's walkable, all of which reflect contemporary thinking on city making and the key principles of its designers.
The only sustainable way of development is a compact city. It has to have good transportation connections. It has to have live, work, leisure. It has to be environmentally sustainable, can't be ghettoized. And I think that's absolutely what Barangaroo is aiming at.
This has been an extraordinarily unique experience, being able to create a piece of city rather than a building. I've seen it evolve from a master plan down to nuts and bolts.
Driven by principal architect Ivan Harbour of London's Rogers, Stirk, Harbour and Partners, the brief for Barangaroo South was to transform one of Sydney's historic industrial precincts into a lively waterfront financial district. Not only did Rogers, Stirk, Harbour and Partners develop the master plan for Barangaroo, but they are also the architects of International Towers Sydney, the 3 premium high-rise office buildings that cement Sydney's role in the financial services sector for the Asia Pacific. With individual floor plates of up to 3,000 square metres and with 6-star Green Star ratings, the towers are of a scale that is unprecedented in Sydney.
What you've really got is an engine room at the south of the site, creating that commercial impetus and actually paying for or contributing towards the beautiful parklands and the public domain at the north of the site. It's actually quite a good public-private partnership because the private commerce is driving a public outcome.
So what we did is we said, right, we've got to gather up all of this space that we have to deliver to pay for this beautiful public realm. And we've got to put it tight on the south of the site. So it really is contained and framed.
536,000 square metres of floor space, mostly in 3 big commercial towers. There's some smaller commercial buildings fronting on Hickson Road and some residential buildings along what's called the residential ribbon along the waterfront. Amongst all of that, there's a series of streets and walkways which connect and integrate all those separate buildings.
You need the density at the water's edge to make the water's edge lively. In my experience, density usually is quite good for vibrancy in cities.
With a population of more than 23,000 office workers arriving each weekday, and the rest of us, Barangaroo South achieves a lot on its tight 7.5 hectare site. To ensure that this diverse precinct works, some essential design principles were explored.
When I was in the Rogers office, in fact, Ivan Harbour was working very hard at how to organise these very large buildings in a way that doesn't overwhelm people walking along the waterfront edge. The scheme evolved before arriving at this sort of fan-shaped solution where 3 buildings, all at a slightly different angle, open up like a fan and you get multiple vistas through to the water's edge.
The idea of the radial geometry, of course, gave you sunlight at different times of the day for different streets. It's not just a regular grid, it's something that's more responsive to its site.
While the three towers are different heights, they are structurally and spatially similar to each other, and their deliberate pill shape emerged through the design process as a response to the restrictions of the site.
We started off with them rectilinear, to be honest, but it became clear because it sits better with the radial geometry.
While key vertical elements such as the external fins and colours break up the facade of the buildings, they also perform as solar shading and give each a unique character.
We had one of the most beautiful remarks came from the head of Westpac. He said, you know, I look at the building, it's quality. I can see the building I'm in. You know, I know where I am because I can see these things that are protecting me from the sun.
The high buildings in the middle of the site and then come down towards the harbour and down towards the road so that you're getting that scale moving in that direction.
And the way we've broken the buildings down is have things that make the streets. It's like a sort of carved plinth around the buildings. The big buildings disappear. You don't really notice them.
When you're walking along the streets that intersect the buildings, to pick up a very strong podium line that brings the human scale back down to a point as you're walking. And I think it works really powerfully.
In addition to International Towers Sydney by Rogers Stirk Harbour and Partners, Barangaroo South also showcases buildings by some of Australia's best architects. And these include residential buildings Anadara by Richard Francis Jones from FJMT and Alexander by Andrew Andersons from PTW Architects. There's also a 3-storey waterfront restaurant by Collins and Turner and a 4-storey retail and commercial building by Durback Block Jaggers, plus many more.
We were always conscious that we wanted to mix up the architects in the rest of the site, so you're getting a diversity like you do in the rest of the city. All those smaller buildings are really local architects.
There are probably a dozen firms of architects who are all making some kind of contribution, and even though there's an overall development plan and a materials palette that ties things together, the buildings are all subtly different. You've got a multiplicity of viewpoints that create a much richer whole than would otherwise be the case.
It's quite a burden thinking you've got this whole piece of city. It's been delivered in one hit. It will succeed if people love being there because it's a great place to meet and enjoy.
What you're getting here is a place which could really be vital. It's on one of the world's most beautiful ports, right on the edge of it. It's extremely exciting, and I think it will really have a potential of creating a place where people want to live.